The light in my bedroom comes through the east window at 6:15 every morning. I've been watching it for 9 years now. Same window, same angle, a different version of me each time. Before the light hits, I'm already awake. Have been for a few minutes. Not anxious, just present. The way you are when the body has slept what it needed and is ready. That didn't used to be how I woke up. Before 2009, before the cardiac event, I woke up already behind, already measuring what needed to happen. The to-do list preloaded before my feet hit the floor. What changed was not my attitude. What changed were the habits. Specific, unsexy, consistent habits. And they changed everything. I want to spend a moment on what I mean by everything. I don't mean my life became perfect or easy or free of the things that had always been difficult. I mean that the foundation underneath my days changed. The floor I was standing on became more solid. And when you have a solid floor, you can navigate the rest differently. Not without difficulty, but differently. The cardiac event at 71 scared me, more than I let on at the time. I was very composed in the hospital. I was very composed in rehabilitation. I'm good at composure. But in the quiet of my apartment, after the doctors and the protocols and the rehabilitation plan, I was afraid, not of dying, or not only of dying, of having done this to myself, of having spent 30 years in a hospital system knowing exactly what I was doing to my body and doing it anyway. That fear, properly channeled, became the habits, not the fear itself. The fear was just the event. The habits were the work. My name is Pat Walsh. I'm 80 years old, and I want to talk about the habits that actually matter, not the ones that get articles written about them, the ones that at 80 I can look back at and trace to real outcomes. These are the ones I'd tell myself at 50, if 50-year-old me would have listened, which I'm not entirely sure she would have. The first habit. I settled my sleep before I settled anything else. 7 hours, non-negotiable, not aspirational, actual. I set an alarm to go to bed, not to wake up. 10 o'clock every night, I start winding down. 10:15, lights out. No phone, no television, no more problem solving. The reason I treat this as non-negotiable is that Tom, my cardiac rehab coordinator, told me early in my recovery that sleep is when the body repairs. Not metaphorically, literally. The cellular mechanisms that handle inflammation and cardiovascular recovery operate primarily during sleep. He wasn't making a wellness argument, he was making a biological one, and I respond well to biology. I was averaging 5 hours a night for most of my career. 5 hours. The research on what 5 hours does to the body over 30 years, I don't want to alarm anyone, but it's not encouraging. What I can tell you from experience is this. The transition from 5 hours to 7 hours was not easy. My nervous system had been calibrated to 5 hours for decades. It didn't simply adjust. For the first 3 months, I woke at 5 regardless of when I'd gone to bed. I lay in the dark. I did not pick up my phone. I breathed. Some nights I went back to sleep. Some nights I didn't. By the 4th month, something shifted. The body, given enough consistent signal, eventually responds. It learned that the alarm wasn't coming, that it was allowed to finish. Now I wake at 6, rested, present, looking at the east window. That is what 7 hours consistently over 9 years produces. It is not nothing. The second habit. I walk before I do anything else in the morning. Not after coffee, not after checking messages. Shoes on, out the door, first thing. The reason it has to be first is that if I don't do it first, something else fills the slot. Every morning. It is the one thing that has never been replaced by something more urgent, because it happens before anything urgent has had the chance to surface. 25 to 30 minutes. Brisk enough to feel it, not so hard that I need to prepare for it. The preparation kills habits. The walk should be the easiest possible version of walking, done every single day. In 9 years, I have missed perhaps 30 mornings. Weather, illness, travel, everything else, I go. What I've noticed is that the walk is not primarily for my cardiovascular system. It is primarily for my head. I come back from the walk with a clarity that coffee never produced. Something about the movement and the air and the lack of screens. I walk the same route most mornings, past the park, past the library, around the block that has the big oak on the corner. The oak has been there for more years than I've been in this neighborhood. There's something grounding about that, about walking past something that was here before you and will be here after, about being small in a useful way. The walk gives me that every morning for free in 25 minutes. The third habit. I eat breakfast before I look at my phone. The phone, the mental load it creates, is best handled on a full stomach and an already walked body, not on an empty one, first thing in bed. I know this is countercultural now. I know most people wake up with the phone. I did it for years, and I was not calmer for it. Breakfast first, oatmeal or eggs. Sit at the table, eat it, then the phone. In a practical sense, nothing in my phone requires my attention before I've eaten. Nothing has ever required my attention before I've eaten. The things that feel urgent in the phone at 6:30 in the morning are rarely urgent at 7:15. What the phone at 6:30 produces is activation, a low-grade alertness that feels like readiness but is actually anxiety. The day starts in response mode rather than from your own center. That distinction matters more than it sounds. Starting from your own center means the morning belongs to you. Starting in response mode means it belongs to whoever sent the last message. I spent 30 years starting from response mode. For the last 9, I've started from my own center. The difference in what those mornings feel like is not subtle. The fourth habit. I have a transition between daytime and evening. For most of my career, there was no transition. Work ended when my body gave out. There was no ritual closing of the day. I went from high-speed problem solving to unconsciousness, with nothing in between. Now I make tea, that's it. Every evening around 6, I make 1 cup of tea, chamomile or mint, and I sit in my chair by the window for 20 minutes. No task, no phone, no plan. This is the part of the day I decompress in, the part where the nervous system gets permission to stop scanning for problems. I resisted this for years. It seemed indulgent. It seemed like time I could use more efficiently. What I didn't understand was that the efficiency I was protecting by not resting was itself degraded by never resting. You cannot run a body at maximum output indefinitely. I have the medical documentation proving this. The tea is not a luxury, it's maintenance. The same way I wouldn't run a department with no maintenance schedule and expect the systems to keep functioning. The body is a system. It requires maintenance. 20 minutes in chamomile tea is the cheapest, most effective maintenance I've found. The 5th habit. I went outside every day. Is this the walk again? It's related, but it's different. The walk is exercise. This is something else. After I recovered from my cardiac event, Tom told me there was evidence that natural light exposure, not sunbathing, just being outside in daylight, had significant effects on mood and cognitive function. Even on gray days, even in November, even when it's cold enough that I wear 2 coats, which is Rhode Island in February. I go outside every day, walk if I can, sit on the bench outside my building if I can't, face toward whatever sky there is. It costs 10 minutes. The return on it, in mood, in sleep quality, in something I can only describe as orientation, is disproportionate. There are days in winter when the sky is a specific gray that I find genuinely beautiful, not in spite of the gray, because of it. A particular Rhode Island gray that I have lived inside for decades now and have finally made peace with. Going outside to look at it is not nothing. It's contact with the actual world, not the world mediated by a screen or a room, the actual air, the actual temperature, the actual light, whatever it is. We were built to be outside. The body knows this. Give it a few minutes of actual sky every day, and it responds accordingly. The 6th habit. I stay in contact with someone every day. Not a long conversation, not always in person, just contact. Michael calls Sundays. That's the full conversation. But the rest of the week, I text him something, or a neighbor stops by, or I call Elaine, when she was still here. Now I call someone else. I thought social connection was a comfort, not a necessity. The research says otherwise. My own experience says otherwise. The weeks when I went several days without real contact with another person, those weeks were harder. The cognition dulled slightly. The mood flattened. Small things, individually, significant, accumulated. Stay in contact with someone every day. A text counts. A brief check-in counts. It doesn't have to be significant. It just has to be real. I want to say something about the real part. Because contact that is not real doesn't count. Scrolling through other people's lives on a screen is not contact. Watching other people have conversations is not contact. Real contact is bidirectional. Someone knows you were there. You know they were there. Something was exchanged. Even a brief exchange, even a text that says nothing much, if it's real, if it's actual communication between two actual people, it counts, and it compounds. The seventh habit. I stopped performing productivity. This is the one that's hardest to describe. For most of my life, I was always doing something, or doing something that looked like something. Organizing, planning, preparing, reviewing. The motion of productivity, even when the productivity itself was marginal. At some point in my 70s, I recognized that the motion wasn't serving me. It was serving the image I held of myself, the effective, efficient, capable person. And the motion was exhausting in a way that actual productive work wasn't. So I started allowing the answer to, "What are you doing this afternoon?" to be, "Nothing in particular." That took practice, more practice than it should have. But the afternoons I spent doing nothing in particular, reading, sitting with tea, walking with no destination, are among the best hours of this decade. Not the most productive, the best. I want to say something about what nothing in particular actually feels like, because I think people hear that and imagine something passive or depleted. It isn't. Nothing in particular, done properly, is fully inhabited. You are completely present to the afternoon, not distracted, not waiting for the next task, just inside the hour. That is a discipline, a different kind of discipline than the one I practiced for 30 years, but a discipline nonetheless. I am still learning it, at 80, still catching myself performing productivity when no one is watching and nothing requires it, still noticing the pull, still choosing, when I catch it, to put it down. The eighth habit. I said no before I was asked to justify the no. This is related to the previous one, but different in application. I spent decades over-explaining my decisions, over-justifying, making sure every no came with a sufficient reason so that no one could question my commitment, my generosity, my character. Now I say no when I mean no. I say it without the paragraph. I'm going to pass. That doesn't work for me. Not this time. People don't usually require the paragraph. I required myself to provide it, and the requiring was its own kind of exhaustion. At 80, my time and energy are real quantities, not limitless. Saying yes to something I don't want costs more than it used to. The no is efficient. I want to address the guilt because I know it's there. The no without a paragraph feels selfish. It feels like you're not giving the person a fair hearing. It feels like closing a door that should stay open. What I've found is that the clean no is more respectful, not less. It doesn't waste the other person's time with justifications they didn't ask for. It's honest, it's direct, and it leaves room for the next real yes, the one you mean. A yes that comes from not knowing how to say no is not really a yes. It's a postponed no with extra steps, and it wastes both people's time getting there. The 9th habit. I reviewed the week every Sunday. Not dramatically, just a few minutes. What happened, what worked, what didn't. Not to fix, to notice. I kept a notebook for a while. Now it's more internal. But the Sunday morning habit, coffee, chair, quiet review, has been consistent. What I noticed over years of this practice, patterns, the specific things that reliably made the week better, the specific things I kept trying and kept not working. It's a lot easier to adjust when you're watching consistently. Almost nothing surprised me after the first year. That's useful. Information gathered and acted on is wisdom. Information gathered and ignored is just data. The Sunday review also does something I didn't expect. It closes the week, puts it in the past tense, makes room for the next one. Without it, the weeks blur, one runs into the next, the months become indistinct, and the blur is not comfortable. It feels like time is happening to you rather than with you. The review restores the distinction. It makes each week countable, and countable things feel more real, more like something you're actually living rather than something passing through. 9 habits, none of them glamorous, all of them daily, all of them additive over time. The cardiac event was the event. The habits before it are why it happened. The habits after it are why I'm still here, still thinking clearly, still watching the east window at 6:15. I'd tell my 50-year-old self to start these, but 50-year-old me had a department to run and thought these were optional. 80-year-old me knows they are not. They are the actual work. Everything else runs on top of them. The department I was running for 30 years is gone. The habits are still here. That is a useful thing to know about what lasts. If any of this reaches you where you are, leave me a comment. I read them all. And if someone you love is sleeping 5 hours and eating at their desk and can't remember the last time they went outside with no particular destination, share this. The habits aren't hard. Starting them is hard. Then they aren't.